compelling day of climbing marred by crashes throughout the day here in stage 9. Geraint Thomas started the day in second, crashed right there. He has abandoned the race. Richie Porte, 14 miles left, going 45 miles per hour. He has also gone to the hospital, done. Dan Martin also went down, but he came back to finish the race. And what a finish it was. Another photo finish. In the end, Warren Barguil thought he won with the fist raised high, but it was Rigoberto Urán, the 30-year-old Colombian, riding in his fourth Tour de France, winning his very first stage. As for Chris Froome, cooling down, he finished third today. He was right there at the end. He maintains the yellow jersey in the all-important Stage 9. Thanks for coming back with us. What a day. Paul Burmeister, Christian Vande Velde, Bob Roll. Bob, so much to sort through here. What's your headline?
Probably that Richie Porte is no longer in the Tour de France. He was one of the pre-race favorites going into the Tour, and an incredible high-speed crash, knocking him out of the Tour de France. Took out Dan Martin in that crash. Dan Martin, remarkably, was able to get up and finish in the second group. That's incredible. And also the way that Chris Froome rode and his team rode, they were spectacular throughout the day. And Chris Froome was going at breakneck speeds on the final descent of the day. He was ready for that. He earmarked this stage months ago when they announced the race course. He said, this is the hardest stage of the race, and that's what he was referring to. And Richie Porte, trying to follow Chris Froome's lead on the descent, was not quite as technically competent. Got just off the road, flying back in, and then hit those rocks on the other side of the road and is out of the Tour de France. Very sad day for Richie Porte and Team BMC.
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, depending on how many newspapers we had, I could probably make 10 or 12 headlines and front pages for this, but it really comes down, like Bob said, it's the unfortunate crash of Richie Porte and taking with him Dan Martin. They crashed at 45 miles per hour. We all knew that this was going to be dangerous. We knew this was going to be dangerous last October when they released this route, and especially in the Mount du Chat. They haven't raced this since 1974 in the Tour de France, and maybe we could see why in a weird way, but especially in the mix in with the rain. So you could see a lot of places where it was dry and then it was wet and dry and wet throughout, so it's always confusing you. You don't know exactly how far you could push it. Unfortunate to ever see anyone crash out. And then we also had Geraint Thomas, Harada. There was a lot of people going home today, unfortunately, in a beautiful stage. It was raced so well. I mean, you think about Sunweb, what they did with Michael Matthews, trying to get up there with the green jersey points, and the KOM points. Don't forget about Bardet going on the attack. It was very impressive. And then, of course, Barguil almost wins the stage after being off the front for the. Really, there's so many different headlines, but really the most unfortunate that is at the top of the list is Richie Porte.
One of the stories, and so many of the stories, took place in the seventh and final climb. You mentioned Mount du Chat. Let's back it up there and take a look at what happened when Chris Froome was having some mechanical issues, and Fabio Aru going against the unwritten rules, recognizing that, Bob, and saying, now it's time to go.
This is the last climb of the hardest stage of this year's Tour de France. Anything happens to any of your competitors, you have to go on the attack, put the pressure on them. You can't just let them catch up. And if Froome realizes they're waiting, he could take as long as he wants. So I think that Fabio Aru did the right thing in that circumstance.
Christian?
Yeah, no, I have to side with Bob here. I mean, this is a sport in 2017, and unfortunately, you know, I was raised with the mentality of Dan Martin. You never do that kind of thing, but watching these pitchers come out and being on the other side of the fence, you have to take every opportunity you get. You know, you have to be responsible for your machinery, whether it's dropping a chain like Andy Schleck in the past or tires. So it happens to everyone. This is the final. This is the Queen stage. This is the climb that everyone's been thinking about for the last half a year. So you have to take your chances when you get them.
You're going to let Chris Froome catch up so he can annihilate you on the descent? That's old school.
Bobby, if we go that far, then we have to think that Chris Froome has to wait for Dan Martin. Okay,
exactly.
Dan Martin's not in the yellow jersey, but you know, if we're going to always be fair as fair as fair,
yeah, exactly.
We're never
the problem.
Going to race.
That's the ambiguousness we need to avoid in the future.
And here goes Danny Martin right there on the attack, and again, back to the shame of him crashing. I mean, okay, he's not out of the race. He did a fantastic job getting up right away. But two of these guys right there, Richie Porte, Dan Martin, Richie out of the race, all completely out of the race. Dan Martin still in sixth place overall, 144 behind. Would have been most likely second place and probably would have won the stage if there. A lot of coulda, woulda, shoulda. But this man right here in complete control, like Bob said, Chris Froome, undeniably the strongest guy in the race. I mean, I don't even know if he went to maximum, to be honest with you. I think he always left a little bit in reserve just in case one of the other riders behind him would counterattack him. Fabio Aru, my pick earlier today, was on the limit, lucky enough even to get over the top. Quintana dropped Alberto Contador way behind even Quintana. This is looking more and more like Chris Froome, but as we can see here, anything can happen in the Tour de France, and that's why you got a race out there. You see what happened with Richie Porte flying off the road.
And that's how ruthless Chris Froome is. Contador's in trouble, he accelerates. Quintana's in trouble, he accelerates. He gets to a descent that's very technical and pivotal to the race, and he attacks. And that's the result. Richie Porte down with Dan Martin. Consequently, the stage winner ran into Martin's bike or feet and destroyed his derailleur, had to spend the rest of the stage in the 11.
There's another headline.
That's Rigoberto Urán, who won the stage after the crash to Richie Porte and Dan Martin.
Yeah, it looked like Dan Martin's heel smashes into the derailleur of Rigoberto Urán. These are unfortunate pictures of Richie Porte.
And again, Richie Porte was taken to the hospital. Dan Martin, you see him there, was able to get back on his bike and did finish well.
So now there's Rigoberto Urán, the stage winner in the green. And he either has the little chainring of a 39.11 or the big chainring 53.11. That's all he had. So obviously he didn't have a great acceleration in the biggest gear that he has on the bicycle. So once it was back up to speed,
I'm thinking that the cable must have got taken out of the equation. So the Mavic mechanic, very prudently, knowing a flat to the finish line, flat road to the finish line, puts the derailleur into the biggest gear. So at least Urán has a chance in the sprint.
Bardet made contact with Barguil, and then over this little bump, obviously Barguil has nothing left in his legs. Bardet going for all the apples in the last 12 kilometers of this, but the group behind him working together.
Another inexplicable part of this stage for me, why is Aru, Jakob Fuglsang, cooperating with Chris Froome in the yellow jersey? Let him chase. Jakob's trying to lead off Fabio Aru. Aru does not have the legs. Bardet tries to come around Urán, no dice. Barguil, Warren Barguil, almost gets him at the line. Froome gets a time bonus of 4 seconds. But the bike throw in a mountain stage, a photo finish in a mountain stage after 3 beyond category climbs. First and last time we might ever see that.
I don't know if that was 3/10,000ths of a second, but much closer of a finish than we thought we would see on a mountain stage with that kind of descent. And in the end, it was not Warren Barguil, but Rigoberto Urán, the 30-year-old, riding in his 4th tour and doing something for the very first time, and that is winning a stage at the Tour.
A massive superstar of one of the most cycling mad countries on earth, Colombia, has not won a stage in the Tour de France, but this is a very deserving win for Rigoberto Urán.
You got to feel all the better when you wait for that first time until you're 30 years old. Exciting finish, your winner here in stage 9. In addition to his joy, you saw some of the unfortunate parts of stage 9 with the crashes. Richie Porte going down at 45 miles per hour with 14 miles left. Also took out Dan Martin. Porte went to the hospital, but Martin, you're going to see him on the second page. Got to point out here, Chris Froome, a terrific ride, finishing at 3rd, not losing any time. He will keep the yellow jersey as the race leader. Dan Martin coming a long way from when he was down with Richie Porte, coming all the way back to finish 9th. Chris Froome, we've talked about him a little bit, but he comes in 3rd today, didn't lose any time. In fact, he's in the lead in the yellow jersey by more now than he was to start. Dan Martin, who we've been talking about, coming in at 6th, and Nairo Quintana falling quite a bit behind, over 2 minutes out of the yellow jersey lead. Chris Froome getting awfully used to this side, the smile atop the yellow jersey podium after a stage. He's impressed you guys in a lot of ways throughout the years. What impressed you the most today?
His poise. Never got rattled. Had a mechanical on the last climb. Waited for his teammates to pass him, pace him back up to the front. Part of his tactical noose is that this is a critical descent off of the Mont du Chat. Use that to maximum effect to put pressure on his rivals. And if you're not able to go as fast as Chris Froome is willing to go in the yellow jersey, then if you're not willing or able to go that quickly on the descent, you are going to be put under pressure. He got another 4 seconds on Fabio Aru, who now looks like his primary adversary, and Bardet also 4 seconds, and business as usual for Chris Froome today.